Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to the episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? Today we're going to be talking about Eiyuden Chronicles Rising, Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster, and the Netflix documentary Our Father. So stay tuned for that if any of that sounds interesting or compelling to you. Before we dive into that, though, a little bit of housekeeping for you. Go check out That Bond Show. We are winding down here. The most recent episode was the kickoff of our Daniel Craig era with Casino Royale. Thank you to Jarrett Green for joining myself and Logan for that. In recording timeline, I went ahead and watched Skyfall last night because we'll be recording that episode tomorrow, and that movie still holds up real well. So I'm glad we're in this Daniel Craig era. Had to sit through like a few months of really rough stuff, but the series is at least closing out strong for me. But yeah, go check out That Bond Show, youtube.com/thatnerdysite as we wind down that little limited run series. Also check out Friday Night Dying Light from our boy Cameron over there every Friday evening as he continues to play through Dying Light 2. Cameron, give us like a little summary of kind of where we're at these days in your playthroughs.
Well, I have 100% like where I'm at right now. And in this most recent episode, I have fully sided against the bootlicking hogs that are the peacekeepers, the PKs as they're called in the game. And yeah, like honestly, I can't say that I regret the decision at all. Um, Also, like if you've watched this week's episode and you're like, wow, that was awesome, just wait because the episodes coming out after this one are pretty intense. Like story-wise, like things finally start heating up quite a bit. Like it gets pretty nuts. Like there are some twists and turns that come around and make the game pretty awesome about where we end up going. So I'm very excited for the next few episodes. Can't wait for people to check those out. Yeah, it's a fun time.
Cool.
I have only a couple more episodes in the can, so I got to get back into the game and start recording some more.
There you go. And then lastly, one thing that both Cameron and I watched this last week, but we recorded a whole separate podcast for that, so we won't talk about it on this one, is Chippendale Rescue Rangers. You can go catch the most recent episode of That D Plus show if you want to go hear our thoughts on that. By and large, we both really enjoyed it, so go check that episode out if that sounds up your alley. Lastly, if you enjoy what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. So Cam, let's kick it off. I've played a little bit of this game, but you have actually made it through and finished it, as I understand. So tell me about Eiyuden. Is it Eiyuden or Eiyuden Chronicles Rising?
I don't know. I don't know which one it is.
Okay,
I've never heard anybody pronounce it before we started pronouncing it.
fair enough.
So
I probably say Eiyuden. Like I feel like typically in an EI situation, like the second vowel is the one that really gets the punch. But you know, whichever.
so
Eiyuden
the,
Chronicle
the
Rising.
yeah, the issue I have with that is that, and it's not sorry,
It's
it's not an issue. The
it's
confusion that it causes for me is in Japanese, you can like this is something they do.
yeah.
You can pronounce E and I as a,
Mm-hmm.
or you can pronounce it as like you can pronounce the E and I separately
Mm-hmm.
because they can be phonetically together or separate
Yeah.
in a way that greatly alters the way you pronounce that word.
Fair
So
enough.
I don't know which it is.
Fair enough. And as soon as I was saying that, I was like, well, this is also like famously, this is by the Suikoden team, which I say is
Mhm.
Suikoden. I'm pretty sure that's how it's said, and that's SUI. So you and I is neither of those sounds. So what do I know? But
Yeah.
anyway, Eiyuden Chronicles Rising. This is the prequel to the Kickstarter game 100 Heroes that will be presumably coming out next year.
Mhm.
They did kind of the same thing that Bloodstain did
Yep.
when that got kickstarted, where they were like, here's a little spin-off game to tide people over until the big one comes out. So yeah, what did you
With
think
the
of Rising?
So I did want to make a quick point out with Bloodstained. They did a NES bit style
Yeah.
version of it. This is going to be more in line. Like this is basically a 10 to 12 hour tech demo.
Okay.
And so this is very much like what we're going to be seeing in the final game. I had a blast with it. I thought it was amazing. I was kind of hesitant because I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. Do I want to wait till 100 heroes? Um, but I'm really glad that I did hop into it. I just fell immediately in love with the characters and the world. And I tweeted out about it. Like this game scratched itches that like I've had for a long time with for a game.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the town building aspect, um, whether it's like this really cool character combo system that they're using in the game for the battle system is absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I've had an amazing time with that, and then also the story is just actually like really like a very simple, heartfelt story of just like about helping people out,
Mm-hmm.
and like it's great. I love the characters, the main three characters. I just absolutely adore. CJ is just rambunctious and precocious and
Mm-hmm.
just an absolute this bundle of energy. You have Guru, who is just this like gruff, stoic mercenary guy. Like these are very classic and very like sometimes cliched out character tropes. But there's something about the design and the aspect and the chemistry between these characters and how they're written
Mm-hmm.
that feels great.
And
And then on top of
the
yeah,
fact that Guru is a giant kangaroo with
with a great
w-
sword.
with a great sword, with what I thought at first when I met him was like a basically an eye patch kind of thing over his face, and it wasn't until I saw like his like big character art splash on the screen and like his character introduction that I realized it's like no, he's just kind of got like the emo hair down across one eye. I was like, nice. So yeah,
Yep,
like where I'm at in the game myself is I just got Guru as like
cool.
a second character. So I've started doing a little bit of like I did like one adventure or like one little dungeon thing, going and collecting resources with him. Now that I can smash through like boulder things.
Yep. I don't like if you look at the key art and stuff, you know who the third
Oh yeah,
character for the party is.
yeah.
So it's very clear. But I don't want to actually like go into spoilers for anybody so much. Just because sometimes the way that it unfolds is quite fun. And yeah, it's just I've had an absolute blast with it. The actual like the story and character motivations are fantastic. They're like overall very straightforward. But really, where I think this game shines is its ability to combine a side-scrolling kind of arcade combat system, like a la X-Men, Ninja, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles style, like going across, but doing it with just an awesome battle system where each character is assigned to a button and they do their attack based off of that. And there's this entire team attack system that works out like spectacular. You haven't gotten too into it yet, but there's a lot more of a uh, like the character swap becomes very important later on in the game.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like how certain not weapons, but how certain equipment will deal more or less damage, and sometimes the enemies can be a bit tough towards the end game, and so you kind of have to juggle that around depending on which dungeon you're.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I will give a massive shout out to the dungeon design, the interconnectivity, the things that are locked out. The dungeons are built more like a Metroidvania
Yeah.
style of dungeon delving than anything else, and it's spectacular for it. Because you're like, how do I get past this thing? Like, I guess I can't get past it right now. But in the back of your mind, you're like, there's got to be something. And then
Mm-hmm.
eventually, when they introduce it, you're like, bingo, there we go, that's it, and
Yeah.
it's just awesome.
Not even in the like there are definitely elements of like okay I can't get past this point until I unlock that ability, but even what I'm finding is like the resource gathering like elements of the thing, like as I the first thing you can collect is you'll start collecting lumber, and you can start seeing like trees that will shimmer that you can cut down kind of in that first great forest area, and I would go through that area and I'd see these like giant mushrooms. I'm like, those seem like so specifically placed that like seems like it's going to be a thing, but what, like, I can't do anything with those mushrooms. And then, an hour later I unlock, some kind of thing that now allows me to gather resources from those mushrooms as I find them in the world. So I was like, cool.
Mhm.
I like that. Even that's not like, allowing me new areas of traversal or anything, but like just now there's a new thing I can do in that same area. It's like
Mhm.
unfolding that out in a fun and interesting way.
Yeah. On top of that, the way that the town builds out and the way that you so like the town builds out as like basically you help them. There was a massive earthquake, so some buildings have been destroyed. You help them rebuild it or build like brand new stuff. And one of the things they do is you realize that there's two ways of upgrading your equipment. There is a like you can get it like improved, so it's a +1, +2, +3 to show kind of like its ranking. And then there's actually a like, have you unlocked the tailor yet or
Not
the
yet.
armorer? Okay.
I just unlocked the smithy is basically what
Okay,
I've
so if you
unlocked so
so
far.
this the smithy is very much like a template of how the other stuff is gonna get rolled out. Um, but the way that like there so the smithy is not where you make weapons, it's where you improve your equipment.
Hmm.
There is a like later on you'll run into it. They happen pretty sequentially. Um, and so like your traversal abilities and like even and of course in combat abilities are tied to your like armor.
Hmm.
So as you improve your armor, you get like additional abilities to use in combat, or you those abilities get improved.
Hmm.
Um, like it's just like it's done really brilliantly and gives you a do I really need better armor? No, but you kind of want better armor because then you'll be able to do a lot more cool stuff.
Hmm.
And it's the same thing with weapons. As you get new weapons, you're not necessarily like, do you necessarily need new weapons? No, but what they do is they let you get further. Like, so right now, your CJ has basically 2 attacks,
Hmm.
and Guru has 1 attack.
Yep.
Um, as they get their new weapons, that's improved.
Hmm.
And but it's so much more than that, but I don't want to tell you because I want you to experience it and get excited about it when you just like when you get them. So
Yep.
it's totally worth it. It's super awesome.
I'll definitely say
Yeah.
it is not at all the combat I was expecting. Like, knowing that this is like basically a spiritual successor to the Suikoden games, I was expecting more like turn-based RPG stuff. And so like when I'm in that first dungeon and just like, or like when, and not even the first dungeon, but like the first encounter where you're fighting bandits to save the, crocodile guy or
Hogan.
whatever. Hogan, yeah. um who I made Australian when I was doing the Let's Play, because I was like, he's a crocodile, he's his named Hogan. I'm assuming that's a reference to Crocodile Dundee, Paul Hogan.
It
And
is. It
and
is 100%. Yeah.
yeah, and
Cuz
basically just
he even has the
exactly, like,
Crocodile
yeah,
Dundee hat.
he has
Yeah.
the hat, he
He
pulls out a knife at some point, and I'm like, that's not a knife. um uh but yeah, so like that was fun. And then also like CJ feels very much like Kid from Chrono Cross, at least in like the
very
but
in its
but I
design.
did not make her Australian, even though Kid very much is Australian in Chrono Cross. Anyway, it was fun just doing
Oh,
voices for these
also
characters in there.
Guru's Australian as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep.
um
The
uh
beast the variety of beast people in this game is awesome.
yeah.
Like, I'm
um
so stoked for 100 heroes because you have, like, 100 heroes,
yeah.
but, like, I can't wait for that because, like, it's just really cool to see, like, just different kinds of people all kind of, like, thrown
Yeah.
together in this world, and it's just so cool, and nobody like and it's great, like, Hogan's awesome because Hogan, like, right away is just like, "Let me help you out," like, get you set up with things, you meet, like, there's so many cool characters. The bird
Yeah.
who, like, is runs the jewel shop like, the jewelry shop,
Hmm.
who yeah, like, it's awesome. Also, the Rapricious Mayor,
Yes. Yeah.
like, so good. There's, like,
I was
some
like,
really
I've like in the Let's Play that will come out on Tuesday, I was like, I've said Rapricious way more in like the last 30 minutes than ever in my life before.
100%, yeah, the way
They
that they
really
chose
like,
that word,
that was somebody's word of
yeah,
a day calendar when they started writing the script on this one.
it's awesome, man. I loved it. There's such really just good, fun humor in this game as well. That just makes it fun and fantastic. There's so much about it that I love. It's
Hmm.
great. The bond, like, I can't wait for you to play more and experience the bond that grows between Guru and CJ,
Mhm.
as they become, better, as they get to know each other better while being treasure hunting partners. It's fantastic. Like, this game is just such a romp fantasy fun time with just some, like, and honestly, like, I loved building out the town. Like, I loved it. I cared about it. I wanted to build out more of it.
Mhm.
I can't wait for 100 Heroes. I'm so stoked. As a disclosure, I backed it years ago.
Yeah, this is one I remember, like, when it came to Kickstarter, I considered backing it, and then I was like, backing it's basically just like putting it on pre-sale or whatever. I don't need to do that. I did that for Bloodstained and then waited for 4 years, and it was like I didn't really feel like any extra ownership for having backed Bloodstained. So when this one comes out, I was like, I'll just eventually play it. And as it is with Rising, I like playing it here. I'm playing it on Xbox Game Pass. Um,
I played it on PC Game Pass.
Nice, there you go. So yeah, it's it give. Did you ever play Spiritfarer?
No, remember, I have like emotional trauma that I'm afraid to revisit when I play that
Fair enough. This very much gives me it in like gameplay and just the elements of, light kind of action platformer 2D
game.
kind of like combat stuff that you're using to gather resources to go back and like build up your stuff. There's a lot of like Spiritfarer vibes that this is giving me. Spiritfarer, I think, is a little bit more like you're kind of completely customizing like where buildings and stuff go on your ship, versus this, like, the town very much has like, this is where the inn is going to go, this is where the tavern's going to go. But it's still like you're going out, you're gathering the resources so you can bring them back either for a side quest or to like help somebody out in the town, or to build something out in the town to help you kind of continue on your journey. And that's like the element of that's been really fun for me, because Spiritfarer was one of my favorite games a couple years ago. And this doesn't necessarily have all of the potential emotional trauma tied to it that the emotional core of Spiritfarer can have, as you are basically Karen driving people to the afterlife in that game. But yeah, I decide, like, I've had it installed on my Xbox for a couple weeks. So it was one that I pretty much like. I'm pretty sure the Let's Plays this week are going to be like this and Trek to Yomi, because I've had them from Game Pass for a couple weeks, and I just never haven't gotten around to playing them yet. And it was your tweet actually, where you'd finished it, that I was like, oh, like maybe this is the thing I'm looking for, because I have been kind of in a bit of a gaming rut since Lego Skywalker Saga, where I'm just kind of like, I don't really like. I hop in, I play a few rounds of Fortnite. Also, shout out to Josh the Noise Brown, who is a friend of mine in like the Twitter sphere, and we've hung out at conventions and I've done their podcasts and stuff. And he randomly killed me in a match in Fortnite, and I was so mad, but I was like blown away that I encountered somebody I knew in Fortnite. Um, but
Nice.
and he confirmed that it was him. But yeah, I just haven't found like the next thing that's grabbing me. And with so many games kind of being delayed or being pushed out of 2022, I don't know necessarily what the next big things on the docket are for me that are going to grab me. I think this week one of the other ones I want to check out is Floppy Nights, because I played that at PAX a couple years ago and really enjoyed it. I think it's another game coming to Game Pass. But yeah, so hopping into this one, I was like, I did it for the Let's Play, and I was like, oh yeah, I think this is the one I'm going to hop in and play some more of. And then I played like another hour and a half after I basically stopped the Let's Play, and just have been enjoying it. When we finish the podcast, I will probably hop back in and play some more of the game. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fun one, and I look forward to seeing where it goes. And I think part of the selling point was also, I think you and Josh Silverman were having like some back and forth on like the amount of
Mhm.
time it took to play. And so when you guys were like, yeah, it's 10 to 13 hours kind of thing, more if you want to do like all sorts of side stuff, I was like, okay, like, well, 10 hours, I can definitely, knock that out. And enjoy my time with that. And if it, really gets its hooks in me, it's cool to know that I'll have other stuff I can do and other side quests and stuff. So yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Yep. I completed the vast majority of side quests before I beat the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, It's a lot. There's a lot of side quests, but a lot of them are like, hey, I just need you to go talk to this person. And it's
Mhm.
like, okay, cool. I talked to that person. It's like, cool. Now go report back to that person.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like
Yeah.
that's all it is. And the fast travel system makes things so easy just to do that. Like pop in, pop out,
Yeah.
no problem.
Yeah.
I loved it.
The first couple side quests I've had, it was like, hey, I need, 3 of this thing. And I was like, well, I've already done a couple extra like trips through that dungeon. So I've already got 6 of that thing. So here you go. Enjoy.
Mhm.
Basically, like talk to them and then immediately turned in the quest.
Yep.
Always love being able to do that. And I like that, like, there was a, I was confused at first because it's like, people are always posting what they need on the bulletin board. And so I went to the
Mhm.
bulletin board and didn't realize you can't like accept the quest there.
Yep.
It
That's a
just
massive confusion
That's
point.
just like that's telling you, hey, this is where they are to go accept the quest from them, but then you need to go and actually just talk to them. But once I've like
It,
figured that out, I was like, okay, well that's easy enough to do because of the fast travel system. Because yeah, it's just like, well,
mhm.
anywhere you can go, like once you've been there once, you can now hit it up and just kind of bounce around. There's no like cost to that or anything like that.
I will say the bulletin board is great for later on when you know that it's like, oh man, do I have any more side quests before I go do this main quest thing? You can literally just go to the board
Hmm.
and it tells you if there's anything left. And if it says, yeah, there's nothing really on here right now, then you know, okay, in order to unlock more stuff, I have to go do the main story quest. I did that plenty of times, especially later in the game when I wanted to like do as much as possible before I beat the game.
Hmm.
And there's also like even after you beat the game, you can still go and do side quests and stuff. In fact, some side quests don't unlock until you play it in the post game.
Yeah.
Uh, so overall, I have to say, like I was really like blown away by just like some really smart game design decisions that they made. And also, I want to give a shout out to because the person who actually tweeted about it and got me to think, yeah, I should just go get it. It's on Game Pass on PC. Like let's check it out. Was actually DJ Stormageddon, Matt,
Okay. Yeah.
friend of the show, who is just an awesome dude, and he's a great guy. And him tweeting about it made me realize I do want to like. I'm like, yeah, I'll do this. And I like within a couple hours, and then the reason I asked Josh, Bear Punch, about it was I wanted to see. Hey, I think I'm getting close to the end, and I'm kind of putting it off because I don't want it to end.
Hmm.
But if I know, okay, I do have that many hours, then maybe I can just figure out a way that I can just commit and do what I want, like before the end of the game. And that's exactly what happened. So
Yeah.
it was an awesome time. I love the characters. There's some interesting twists and turns towards the end of the game that are very fun narratively.
Hmm.
Um, that I can now see as somebody who backed the 100 Heroes and kind of understands the premise of that game. I then saw like, oh, these are the tangential connections that tie it to the main going ons of 100 Heroes.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. That's
very cool the way they tie it together.
As somebody who didn't like when 100 Heroes came to Kickstarter, I was like, oh, it's a Suikoden thing. Cool. Awesome. I probably watched the trailer and then have largely forgotten about it. Are just is it clear or are you aware like if the characters you're kind of playing as in this are characters that will be in 100 Heroes as like party members, but it's like it'll be like a like they'll be like the I guess like are these like your Yuffie type characters or something that will come in, but they're not necessarily like the main thrust of the story, or are they? Do we know if they're going to be kind of main characters in 100 Heroes?
We don't know just yet.
Okay, cool, all good. I just want to circle back on the bulletin board thing because one more thing I love, even though you can't like accept the quest there from the bulletin board, I like that it basically still tells you all the like the critical information of the quest. So
Oh yeah.
if you do want to, if it's like, well, I could go to that person, or I could go to this place and collect all the things that that person is looking for first, and then go talk to that person. It's like you know exactly what you need to get. So
Mhm.
I do appreciate that as well.
I
So yeah,
100% did that multiple times. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, shout out to that game. Go check it out on Game Pass if you're interested, or it is out there on on PlayStation and Switch as well. But if you got Game Pass, play it on Game Pass. You're
It's
paying for
free.
it already. Might as well just take advantage of that. Any final thoughts there on Eiyuden Chronicles Rising?
Just that I'm super excited for 100 Heroes. I can't wait.
Yeah, cool. So as I alluded to, I've been kind of in a bit of a gaming rut. Um, and one of the things I've been doing to kind of like, I was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna just kind of go back and rely on comfort gaming food. And I bought back when like it got announced, I bought basically like the Pixel Remaster collection on Steam, and played a little bit of like 4 when it came out, and then I did like a let's play of 6 when it came out because 6 obviously was my favorite game for a very very long time, and then I basically, just because Steam isn't typically my like go-to place to play games, I just typically don't do a ton there. But this last week or so, I've been like, you know what, I'm gonna like I'm just in the mood for Final Fantasy 6. So I've been going through and playing Final Fantasy 6 on Steam, um, and it's like it's it's amazing just how much of that game is just so like ingrained, and I just know where like things are, and I know like which way to go to get the things that I need, or I know like what to do to get the extra hidden things in the game and stuff like that. So just so much of that is like just baked into my mind. Um, in terms of like the quality of life things that they improve, I'm a huge fan of Square Enix has done this on a lot of their games recently, where it's like we'll give you like a fast forward mode, or we'll give you like a an auto battler or something like that. This doesn't have as many of those accoutrements, but it does have auto battle. If you like turn it on, you can't like just keep it on, which is annoying. But you can do it like if you just want to go into a battle and like just automatically hack things, you can do that. And you can like hold a button that will basically like fast forward or like play things at double speed, which I appreciate because it means I don't have to pay money for sprint shoes in that game anymore, which was basically a relic that let you like double your walking speed. So I would
Hmm.
always like just pour money into that because otherwise you're just slowly trudging along the land. So I appreciate that. I will say it's weirdly more difficult than I remember the game being. Like
Really?
I've definitely had a couple times where like I got caught in a battle where like one of my characters was raging and one of my characters was confused, and so I couldn't snap them out of it or heal them, and the other enemies just like wiped me out, and I was like, well, shit. So I've had a couple times where I've just like straight died, like party kill kind of situations, and been like, well, I gotta reload, my last save or something like that. And I don't know if it's that I'm like over relying on these other features, so I'm not grinding as much as I would have in years past. But also it feels like the numbers are significantly lower than I remember. Like feels like my HP totals and like the leveling up is just slower going. So that's like a weird little element, but I'm getting through 'em. I'm enjoying the game, regardless. It's just kind of like a nice comfort thing to go back to and enjoy. I can kind of be playing it, while I'm, watching an episode of Dimension 20, or watching, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers or something like that, and I know enough where to go in the game that I can kind of just be on autopilot, and enjoy that, while appreciating the like they did like a full remaster of the music, the soundtrack and stuff, which sounds great for this game. It's very much kind of distant worldsifying a lot of the music in the game, which is lovely. I'm never going to complain about that.
Certainly
And
not.
the pixel design, the big element of this, the pixel remaster, like I appreciate the up res, kind of the changes to these pixel sprites versus like the previous mobile version and stuff like that was much more like chibiified. um
Hmm.
so I it's like a happy medium, and I'm just having a good time, just kind of like visiting this, old friend of a video game.
I'm happy, man. I'm
Yeah.
happy that you're enjoying that. Yeah, I haven't really thought much about like what I want, like, because I'm the same thing. I like after beating you know Eiyuden Chronicles Rising, I've kind of found myself in a rut again,
Hmm.
and like I'm now thinking like, man, what do I want to do? Do I want comfort? Do I want something new? And like I'm struggling with that right now, and I'm not sure which. I think luckily I'm gonna have Dying Light 2 to go back to, and like as kind of like a getaway from like figuring out what I want to do to just being like, well, I don't have to. I get to do this
Hmm.
and like put this together and like record more let's plays because it's fun. I really enjoy doing it. So I'm looking forward to doing that. But like I have found myself in my own free time definitely feeling that rut issue. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just like, I've spent, is it because I spent like 200 hours in like like multiple playthroughs of Elden Ring that like now it's like it took so much and now it's just like, oh wait, what should I do now?
Hmm.
Like I don't know. I don't know if it's because like I'm super self-conscious about buying games because I haven't started my new job yet. Like I'm not sure what's going on yet. And so, that's kind of like where things are at for me. Like I feel you on that. Like it's weird. We're in a time where I think that we expected to be playing certain games that got delayed, and so there's just kind of like this open window right now. And usually I feel like there's usually a game that pops out that like steals the air in the room,
Hmm.
like sucks up all the air in the room. During these moments, like say the original Dying Light back at years ago,
Hmm.
kind of like taking that center stage. But I just don't feel like there's anything right now that's doing that.
Yeah, I think, like, I mean, for me, like looking back at last year, this is around the time that I was like, all right, I'm going to bite the bullet and hop back into Final Fantasy 14. And then I spent the next 6 months playing through Final Fantasy 14, because it was like obviously the pandemic has derailed a lot of game development over the last couple of years, and this year I admittedly could hop in and check out the 6.1 patch, because I didn't do that ever with Final
Oh, it's
Fantasy
fun.
14.
It's
Um,
fun stuff. Oh, funny enough, I actually recorded a let's play of that, but I
mhm.
haven't like. But I was like, I just recorded it, and then I totally forgot that I recorded it, and so it's like it's just sitting on my hard drive.
All right. But yeah, like that's the summer months, especially. I think there's always kind of a little bit of a summer lull until like the big, things are gonna hit. And this year in particular is just like, well, like that, like some things got delayed. But also I don't know. Like I remember doing kind of like looking ahead at the year at the beginning of the year and being like, what are most anticipated games, and it there was always like a drought for me after Lego Star Wars came out, where it was like the next like honestly I think the next big game on like Game Informer's like release date list that I'm interested in, I wouldn't even classify as a big game, but it's Two Point Campus, which was supposed to have come out already, but it got bumped, and now it's going to come out in like August or something like that. So it's like, well, like that's a thing that could have been taking my time and having just some fun, as a sim builder, kind of like building out your campus, you're building out your college campus stuff. Um, and so yeah, it's just a weird, like there have been, especially shouting back to Josh as he's been going through all of his run through of like the Yakuza games. There have been times where I'm like, maybe I should just go back, like I should go and download Yakuza 3, 4, 5, and like go back and start playing through those games that I started that series last year. Um, and so like I have days where I'm like, maybe I'll do that, but then I'm just kind of like, like I know that's a big investment. I don't really like. I don't feel like another big investment right now. I'm looking for a 10 to 15 hour experience, that I can
Hmm.
kind of, knock out in a few days or, over the course of a week or something like that. And then there are other days where I'm sitting around and I'm like, I'm kind of like, I'm at a point where I'm kind of keeping an eye on if Dying Light 2 goes on sale. Maybe I will check out Dying Light 2. In part, in the back of my head is I think it would be hilarious if like I just fell in and got sucked into that game and ended up beating it before you did. Um, but that's just me. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
uh-huh. In the same way that like I've definitely done that with like games Logan played or something like that, where it's like I know how slowly Logan goes through games these days, where I'm like I can jump into that 5 months later and still beat it before he does. Um, yeah, it's been a weird time, but also on Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, it's also one where like I'm constantly checking my email to see if there's any update on my Steam Deck, um, uh, because
Yeah.
that is a game that I will like. I'm not. super eager to sit here and play it on my couch in front of my computer to monitor. But you get a Steam Deck in my hand, I will absolutely play the hell out of Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster before I go to bed at night, instead of playing game after game of Risk on my phone before I finally start to nod off. But yeah, that's just another element of like my Steam Deck is scheduled for Q2. We're halfway through that, so hopefully I'm getting it here in another month and a half. But yeah, who knows? But yeah, that's
So I
definitely like
yeah.
one that I'm eager to like. Those games are a reason I'm very excited for my Steam Deck, is just to go back and play Final Fantasy in like awesome big screen handheld mode.
Yeah, I'm looking over stuff right now, like thinking like because I'm thinking to myself like, what am I actually looking forward to? The next thing that I'm actually looking forward to is Fire Emblem Warriors Three Hopes.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who was a like
That's
as somebody, yeah,
I wish I were excited for that game, because Three Houses was my game of the year that year back in
Three
2019.
Houses was such a good
I
game.
love that game. I love like the cast of characters and stuff. I have zero interest in hopping into a Muso,
Yeah,
which is what
I
that
think
game is
that's
going to be.
I think that's the thing. Like for me, I Persona 5
Strikers.
Strikers, like for me felt like there was a lot of variety, but not a lot of depth to the combat system
Mm-hmm.
that made it like detrimental for me. I've never gone back to it even, which sucks because I love Persona 5, but also I was just also kind of like Persona 5'd out a bit because I had played Royal
Mm-hmm.
earlier that year, and so or not that earlier that year, but like the year before. And so I think I was like okay setting down Persona 5 for a while. And then Strikers came out, and I was like, well, I'm definitely going to play this. It's a Muso game, but if from what I understand, like Fire Emblem Warriors is the same dev team that does Hyrule Warriors,
Mm-hmm.
and Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was like one of my top 10 games of the year. That year that it came out, it was such an like it's still such a great game and has such a deep combat system with its like variety and cast of characters. So if we get that level of depth with Fire Emblem Three Hopes, with the three like the uh three heroes, it's three heroes, right?
The Three Houses.
Three houses, thank you. I'm like hopes, houses, heroes. Yeah. Yeah, so because Fire Emblem Heroes is the mobile game, sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a lot of that getting crisscrossed on my brain right now, but the if it's that level of depth of combat with a like a strong like system with a Muso play style, like I'm totally down for doing that with Fire Emblem characters and classes and stuff. Like honestly, like yeah, let me go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and take Claude, and we're gonna climb to the top again. Because if you aren't Yellow Deer, I don't know what's wrong.
Yeah, that's like, again, I hopped into Persona Strikers earlier this year, I think, when it came to PS Plus, and I played it for like a Let's Play and stuff, and I was just like, oh yeah, this game style just does not click for me. There's, especially with like all of the stuff in a Persona game, the fact that they're trying to like make all of those mechanics work in a real time like action Muso, I was like, no, there's just way too much. It's just pure chaos, and there's no way I can like the reason this works in Persona is because I have time to think each turn and do what I want to do or what I need to do. This, having no time to breathe and just everything, like if I want to switch, characters, I have to actively be switching between characters to try and like do all that stuff. Is like, no, this is pure chaos. Then this is not going to work for me. And so, like, I remember seeing the trailer for Three Hopes come up, and I was like, oh cool, we're gonna get more in the Three Houses Fire Emblemverse. Oh, it's this, boo. Like, just give me another just give me a proper real-time strategy sequel to Three Houses. But nope,
I don't know, man.
alas.
They wrap up Three Houses super neatly at that.
Admittedly,
So,
I never went back when they added the fourth house, like the expansion, in large part because I'd played through like 2.5 like of the stories of that game already. That I was like, I've probably put in a good amount of time into into Three Houses.
It's
So
good. It
yeah.
like the side story stuff. The thing about it is you can even go and play that
Hmm.
even if you aren't at like that timeline in the game. Like if you go back with like your people
Yeah.
and just do it separately, it totally works that way. But they also work great as basically being additions of being inserted into kind of the main storyline.
Yeah.
Um, uh, it's really good. Like, and for me though, the main crux of it was it's actually a story about Byleth, your main character, and it basically tells the story of it gives more depth and more uh interest to the story of Byleth's parents and their birth and like the greater impact of all of that.
Mm.
And so it actually has like some really interesting facets to it. And it all takes place before the time break. So
Speaking of parents, segue.
oh
Um,
yeah. Cool.
let's hop over to the last topic that you're bringing to the table today. We started talking about this a little bit before we started recording, and you were like, "Do we want to just talk about this on podcast?" I was like, "I don't know," and you were like, "Yeah, let's just talk about this on the podcast." So I will throw it over to you. You just wrapped up watching Our Father on Netflix. So Cam, tell us about this wild story for those that don't know.
So before I get into it, I do want to preface this by saying there are some weird, cheesy, not great reenactments happen in this. A lot of documentaries, in order to give context to what people are saying and what they're describing, they will put them in reenactments. Those are fine. The problem is that they, during some like personal like monologuing by the individuals that are talking about what happened to them and like how they feel about it, they the whoever directed the documentary decided to put and try to create a like real example of what that must feel like walking down the street and anybody could be related. Like it's done in a really really bad way. There's a terrible scene where one of the gals is in a red hoodie, Indiana University hoodie,
So you're jumping
with
ahead. You've not given people the like just
no.
general premise of the thing.
And I haven't yet because I want to explain. Like
Okay.
when I say I really enjoyed it, like be prepared for stuff that make you go, "Is this even like
So
what?" Because that's all front loaded.
yeah, content not necessarily like the best direction or even the best execution of a documentary, but the I like just the I guess yeah, those are the issues. Whereas the content is really what's the most fascinating to you.
Yep. And I will say it's all of that stuff is front loaded. The back half is traditional documentary, and it like goes. It's very good. But yeah, so basically the story is about the children of a fertility doctor um who I'm trying to think of how to phrase this without it being too squicky, too gross. So basically
Used his
women
own samples.
yeah, there you go. So women from 1979 to when he retired in the like sometime in the 90s, I think is when he retired. During that time, he would so he was a very Don Klein is or was rather an incredibly well respected, like national wide famous fertility doctor who was known for basically performing borderline miracles. And he was one of the first doctors to say, and like legitimate, and this is on like a legitimate scale as well, because he would literally, like as an OBGYN, he was also a surgeon, and he would perform surgeries that were like not experimental, but definitely not well tested. For example, repairing fallopian tubes, a lot of like internal surgery that is now performed today to help women with fertility issues. He pioneered a lot of it. And so he had like on a legitimate standpoint, like he is a like truly incredible doctor on that standpoint. Unfortunately, this incredible doctor also is something like bordering on a sociopath, in that he essentially, and they don't know why because he won't tell them why he did it. He's never told the kids why he did it, but basically, he, during artificial inseminations, either claiming to be using a donor sample from the hospital, from what was a medical resident. And here's the thing, like sometimes the samples that he used were from medical residents. But when he, like, we don't know what his determining factor was, but he would, during artificial inseminations, have his patient get ready. And while they were getting ready, he would go and produce his own sample, take it in and artificially inseminate these women. And for anybody who's like, isn't that wrong? 100% it is. It's a massive violation of trust and every possible, the entire oath of a doctor to do no harm. This irrevocably does harm when it's found out. And so because gene matching technology and 23andMe and stuff like that wasn't around at the time that he was doing this, he basically got away for decades without ever being caught for it. And you have these women and these men who, and the thing about it is they mention at the beginning of the film, they're like, you are only limited to, like, when you get a donor can only donate 3 times. And it's imperative that you only let them donate up to 3 times because, or rather you have the sample and you only use the source of the sample 3 times because you don't want too many people living in the same area who might be half siblings. The genetic issues that could cross over with that are pretty high and it can cause problems. And so they're talking about the efficacy of practice of artificial inseminations for that purpose, and why and they heavily emphasize 3 times because Dr. Klein didn't do it just 3 times. He used himself as a sample for what was close to, if not more than 100 by now they know about. If not more. Also, there are screeners that I think in the documentary, they say 30% of men who go to do donations end up getting, having to leave during this, in the screening paperwork, because if you have, if you have any, family issues, if your family has a history of cancer, if your family has a history of anything, you get eliminated. Dr. Klein has autoimmune disorders. In his family. He himself suffers from an autoimmune disorder. In fact, treatment for that autoimmune disorder, he would have been washed out as a surgeon in school or during his residency if a friend of his hadn't helped him get, basically do a workaround to get him the medication he needed to deal with that autoimmune issue. And by the way, this same friend, later his wife went to Dr. Klein for fertility issues. He performed a reparative surgery, and then he inseminated her with his sample.
Mm-hmm.
He literally did that to one of his closest friends, who literally saved his career. This guy is a monster. And it's really at first you're like, is this guy just morally, just he thinks he's doing a service to these people? And it's very clear later on that this man has a massive ego about himself, that he also has some kind of very twisted possible twisted religious beliefs. It's a whole slew of things. Unfortunately, some stuff is conjecture because Dr. Klein has never told anybody why. It's truly tragic for these people because their lives get turned upside down. A lot of them get these 23andMe or Ancestry.com kits as Christmas presents or birthday presents. This is a fun thing that we can do. And you'll see oh yeah, because a lot of it is just confirmation. Yeah, I know this part of my family. And it's cool. 100% white people. Let's go. It is what it is. But these people then find out because they get a notification for their matches. And it's told, yeah, you'll probably get 10 to 15 connections that are that are at most. These people are slammed with well over 3,000 connections because it's every half sibling they have, and then everybody who's linked to their half siblings. And so you have this spectrum of people, and then there was there are people dreading it because they're they look at the list and they have to as soon as somebody gets a notification that they like somebody registers as part of that family tree, a notification goes out to the rest of the family members, and a couple of them have basically designated themselves as somebody to message and saying, "Hey, if you want to talk about your results, like let me know and we'll talk over the phone." And what they describe, these poor people that have described, is basically destroying identities that people have for themselves, because literally everything they knew about their life is like up in the air because their father is no longer their father, biologically anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they have to make these massive reconciliations. They have to ask their parent, "Hey, did you guys go see a Dr. Klein about fertility issues?" And it's like, "Yeah, your dad gave a sample and everything was totally fine." And then it turns out no. And then it's like everything, like it's devastating. You talk like these people talk about how their lives have just been devastated. And at the same time, a lot of these mothers and father, or like a lot of the mothers are just like I'm so torn because on one hand, I was violated, deeply violated. My trust was broken at this. Like one woman says, like I was raped 15 times because she had the procedure done 15 times before it took. And like, and then at the same time, they're like, but at the same time, like we wouldn't have our kids. Like, how do you reconcile? And like, it reminds me a lot of when people talk about divorce and they're like, a friend of mine who's divorced said, if I could keep my kids, I would undo the entirety of my marriage. Like, but that's the caveat though. If I could keep my kids, I don't like people don't want to lose their kids, but they don't want these bad things that have happened in their life. And so it reminded me a lot of that because that conversation I had was not too long ago. And it's brutal. It's so brutal. And at first, because of kind of the hokey, like the kind of like not great documentary style, you're kind of like, okay, like they're upset about this. I get that. He sucks. I get that. And then you start seeing the numbers tally up because at first they started off with it just being like, you know, sibling number 1, sibling number 4, sibling number 7, sibling number 12, 14. Like you get that. And then you start getting into like the high double digits. And you're like, these people are talking, they're like, have I, like, they even talk, they're like, have I dated my half sibling? Because this is Indiana. This is outside Indianapolis. This is communities of people who trusted this doctor for decades to take care of their fertility like issues. And it was just a massive violation of everything. And what's crazy is you're like, man, Cameron, you're describing this. It must be illegal. It's not. Unless you can somehow prove fraud, like the best you're probably going to get is fraud in a civil case. Because you sign away so many waivers and so many things when you agree to become a doctor patient. Because there's supposed to be a trust. Your doctor is supposed to care for you and not do terrible things to you. And you think, well, isn't this covered under, SCA sexual assault law? And it's like in Indiana, it's not. They even talked to the a county prosecutor who wanted to prosecute the case, and he basically said after talking with him, he's like, everything you've presented to me, like, is morally repugnant and wrong and should be against the law, but it's not. And it's this massive gap and it's these massive loopholes. And reason I started watching this documentary is because on TikTok, I ran across a TikTok video of like people who were like, I don't know what their connection to the documentary was, but they're talking about like basically a lot of these violations, these issues, because it turns out because of 23andMe and Ancestry.com, other doctors have been busted for this as well. But once again, there's no federal, like it's not a federal crime to do this to your patient. Like it's, you'd think you could disbar somebody, but what do you do for a doctor who's no longer a practicing doctor, who no longer needs their license to survive? They're retired. By the way, this Dr. Klein is like a pillar of the community because of course he is. They always are. These awful people. Anyway, it goes into it and it's about an hour and a half long. It's about 90 minutes. And it is like I said, the back half is where I don't want to say where the good stuff is, but it's where the impact is in this documentary. I think they probably could have kept it closer to a tighter to an hour with cutting out some of the stuff. But it's difficult. It's really difficult. At one point, one of the people who originally brought the complaint to the attorney general's office, which, by the way, attorney general office never really investigated, and ended up having to be a county prosecutor who investigate. But because of she did this, it's she was able to read a victim impact statement about it, and like just watch it. It's it turned me from being like I don't really like this gal too much to I'm like now like in her corner, like you go girl, get them, like it's messed up. And then you find out towards the end about like a lot of problems that I talked about it before about like, well, what if he did this and he just wanted to provide these families with healthy, wonderful babies? And then they just like, if that's your last argument that you're standing on, they just knock it right out from under you. It's done in a really great way. Yeah, I highly suggest if you have any interest in this case whatsoever, any interest in this idea and like the lack of any sort of consequence for the people who do this, watch it, understand what's going on here, and like I'm now advocating. Of course, I'm advocating for on behalf of like I'm not going out and making it my life's work now to go out and do that. But if you ever like, I now have an opinion on this. I now have feelings about this issue, where before I didn't really have any. It was kind of like a Dr. Phil special before tonight, and now it's like something that's like, yeah, if you want to talk about this, because at the same time, I don't want to say like all these fertility clinics and all these fertility doctors are evil, are trying to do this kind of awful stuff. I definitely don't think that at all. My brother-in-law and sister have their son because of great fertility doctors and scientists who put together an IVF that gave us our nephew. And funny enough, my thought was like, oh my gosh, Jack, my nephew. And it's like, no, it's okay. Like, no, as a fun thing, my brother-in-law and sister, or my brother and sister-in-law decided, hey, wouldn't it be really funny if wouldn't it be real fun if all three of us did 23andMe, and then we could see what halves of us Jack, because you only give half your DNA to your offspring. And so it was fun. And everybody in my family was doing it at the time. And they're like, yeah, it'll be fun. So they did it with Jack because they had an extra one. And it was fun. Also, the 23andMe can like also identify if you have any like genetic disorders or like other stuff like that. So it's also like a health screener.
Yeah.
And like my brother paid for that level of it so that he could like have that, because he and my sister-in-law also want to know if they have any like long-term health genetic issues, which like, surprise, surprise, Josh, my brother. I'm like, surprise, surprise. We do. We already knew that. Look at our family.
Yeah, it's like I remember when 23andMe stuff started being like, oh, it was like, promoted on every podcast and stuff for a while there. And like, oh, it's an interesting enough thing. And then never really thought too much about it until I started hearing these kinds of stories of like people finding, secret relations or whatever that they didn't know about. Somebody in my family's done it. I think it was my sister, I think, has done it and got pinged from like a person we don't know, like not in our family tree kind of thing at all. And it was like the current operating theory is that like my great aunt, in the 50s 60s flower child time or something like that, before she got married, may have had like a fling and like disappeared from the family for 9 months, and may have had like a secret kid somewhere out in the world, because like that's where the connection came from, with this person who like pinged my sister and was like, hey, so I found that we have like this match up through this link in the tree. And it was like just this weird, like she has, long since passed. She's been, gone for maybe 10-15 years now or something like that. And so like we can't go and like verify and eat, like this was my grandmother's sister. My grandmother passed away in
so you don't even have that.
We can't talk to anybody in that family, or in that, like at that level of the family at this point, to like even question of like, hey, would this have been feasible, like timeline wise? Was there ever an opportunity where this could have happened? And it's just this weird, like it's a fascinating, um, like uh, uh,
Yeah,
from that perspective, 23andMe opens up like these fascinating kind of like what happened there to kind of make those connections. But then it also opens up these really horrifying stories of like,
oh yeah,
oh, we can very clearly see what happened here, and it's none of it is good. Um,
yeah.
but at least now these people know, I guess. Like there's well, I mean, some of them I'm sure would have been much happier living in ignorance to this whole situation, but like there's always a case I think to be made of like it's better to know than not know. Because then you can be more
Yeah.
prepared, especially for if this guy had autoimmune issues, that now you know where those came from. Um, there's at least some kind of like solace and hopefully something that can be done there. But yeah.
Two of them have an unidentified autoimmune disorder, which is terrible because basically they're getting treated with things of they're getting their symptoms treated, but they're not getting the cause of it treated because it's unidentified. Like doctors are like it's an autoimmune issue. We don't know what's causing.
Hmm.
Um, and so like it's on top, like it's stuff like that. It's like, man, that is like one of the guys. He goes, yeah. So he's like I've had to go to the hospital, and I've been in the hospital for a long time where I'm literally losing 15 to 30 pounds, or no, 15 to 20 pounds of weight. I said 30, sorry, 15 to 20 pounds of weight every time I go to the hospital, and I'm sick because I like, and it's just like, and like that's horrifying. Also, you're like one of the better looking ones, and it's like that's like, and like, man, that's rough. Um, yeah, but it's also like the conjecture and kind of ideas that they have about why he did this. Once again, this guy sucks. He's never given a proper explanation of why he did anything. Um, some of them think it was an experiment, that he was doing it to like see like the propensity and like potential of his offspring could be. So like they dig into some really deep places and are really upset by a lot of things about him, and like how this is all connected, and it's really really good. I highly suggest people watch it if you're into that sort of stuff. Like if you're like me, you like, the morbid curiosity drives you forward. If you're like, hey, I don't like this, I don't like any of this, because I know sometimes this sort of stuff can be traumatic for people who have gone through similar issues. And I say like that happened to your family, Trevor.
Hmm.
That happened to one of my in-laws. They got pinged up, and it turns out they had a sister they never knew about. It's wild. Like that sort of stuff is just wild.
Yeah.
At the same time, I had a mine done, and so far it's as predictable as you could think. My siblings are my siblings, my cousins are my cousins, my parents are my parents. Bada bing, bada boom. It's all pretty straightforward.
All right.
I'm not too surprised. I did the ancestry.com. I do want to do 23andMe because 23andMe has a better database, so they can pinpoint ancestry a lot better. Which is funny because ancestry.com is called that,
Yeah.
and they're not as good. They don't have their database just isn't as big as 23andMe.
Yeah.
But also shout out to 23andMe being the way that they caught the Golden State Killer.
Yeah. There you go.
Like shout out to that. Like there's a lot of stuff that like as we do more with genetics and DNA and stuff, like I'm just always fascinated about what we're finding out, and unfortunately horrified too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, I think that is gonna do it for this week's episode. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to chat all these things, even the horrifying ones. Let's go around the metaphorical table with any plugs we might have. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Cam?
Yeah, I want to give a massive shout out, you guys, to your Let's Plays that you're doing. We talked about it before. I don't know if you mentioned it here, but I think you might have talked about it before we started. But you are doing the upcoming Let's Play this week is from Eiyuden Chronicles.
Yep.
Rising.
Yep.
So I'm super stoked for that. You guys should be on the lookout for that. That'll be coming out Tuesday.
Yep.
That'll be Tuesday's one, not Thursday. Gotcha. Yeah, so go check that out. That's going to be awesome. Go check that out tomorrow, because this comes out Monday. If you're listening to this after Monday, go check it out on youtube.com/thatnerdy site and check out all of our other awesome content.
Cool. Yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will echo that. I will also, in particular on the Let's Plays, I will give a shout out to last week where I did like a little departure from our normal Let's Plays, and I did instead, I think I ended up titling them That Nerdy Opens instead of That Nerdy Site Opens instead of That Nerdy Site Plays, where I was opening kind of the blind packs of Lego Muppets minifigs. Trying to get the full set of 12 characters. And if you want to see me go mad over the course of about 40 minutes, you can go ahead and watch that two-part special from Tuesday and Thursday's episodes, where basically did like Tuesday and then overnighted more boxes and then recorded the next Let's Play to try again. And I was like, I hate this, and so yeah, you can watch my slow descent into madness, or rather quick descent into madness, really, if you go watch those Let's Plays, or Let's Opens rather. But yeah, we'll be back to the normal Let's Plays this week. As Cameron said, Eiyuden Chronicles, and then also like I said, I think Trek to Yomi is probably the other one that I'm going to hop into this week, because that's been sitting on my Xbox Game Pass library for a little while now. There might be like one or two other things that I might substitute in there, but stay tuned for all that every Tuesday and Thursday on youtube.com/thatnerdysite. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, ring notification bells, all that stuff that you should do to help the algorithms and make all the numbers go happy. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.